Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects, my ideas I'm pursuing. No matter what the problem, the solution, I'm proving it. Let's talk about it and open up the dialogue.
Welcome to the Contractor Stories podcast. I am your host, Bob Muller. Today, I am excited to have a conversation with another plumber. He is an entrepreneur. He is, well, obviously a plumber. I mean, we always want to go back to our roots, get back to who we are. He's a plumber. He's an entrepreneur. He's a visionary. He's a business coach now, and he is a mentor. He has built several successful businesses, has had some good exits out of some of these businesses, doing really, really well on the consulting side. I welcome my guest today, Chuck Staszkieicz. Tell me how to say that correctly.
It's Staszkieicz, but again, like I told you, everybody called me Chuck the Plumber for years in the past.
Yeah. And of course, the original Chuck in the truck, right? So this is where it all begins. And this is why we really want to have that conversation today, because man, we all started, just from that one little spot, but it really goes back even further than that, right? So like, I see you're a New Jersey guy, right? So like your roots go back to that East Coast side. Tell me about growing up in New Jersey, who Chuck was.
Yeah.
Or still is probably.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks, Bob. Thanks so much for working with my schedule and allowing me to come on the podcast. That's amazing to me. And now I'm definitely I didn't name this company the OG Group because I was the original Chuck in the truck, but now I'm gonna have to steal that one. I'm definitely gonna use that going forward because I think that'll resonate with people. Yeah. So I grew up in North New Jersey, Bergen County area. It's about 12 miles from Times Square as the crow flies. So very, very busy community, right?
So the bigger question, though, right there, stop you right there, is it Eagles? Is it the Giants?
So, all right. Yeah, I knew we were going to go there. So I'm a Jets fan. I'm a Mets fan. I'm a Devils fan, and I'm a Knicks fan. Right. I know it was very hard years. Jets and the Mets are very tough teams, but that's how loyal I am, right? Yeah. If you're a Mets fan and you're a Jets fan, you're a loyal person because you can root for people after they lose year after year after year and still root for them. That's so awesome. Yeah, no, it's if you like sports, there's no better area, right? Yeah, there really isn't. I had season tickets to the Devils when they were winning. I saw the Stanley Cup race twice. Fantastic area. I'm blessed that I grew up in that area. Yeah. But I didn't do well in high school, right? Like I barely graduated high school my 5th year, right? Like I got held back. Yeah. And, my mom worked for a community college there, and she kind of was like, hey, just go and see if you're going to like it, and you can go for free, right? So I didn't do well. I didn't do well there. So I like most people, I went to working with my hands, and I started out in food, believe it or not. I worked in a restaurant for a long time, and then I got into the deli business. And if you go to New Jersey, there's some of the best delis, some of the best pizzerias. Like the food in New Jersey is just it's insane. It's its own world.
Oh, it's insane. But it's also a very blue collar, hardworking class of people in that area, right?
100%. And you know what it taught me, and I can correlate my experience in the deli with my experience in plumbing, because it was, you always had to when you had a line out the door, you had to figure out, okay, like I can't just slice ham for one sandwich. I got to slice it for 6 sandwiches, right? Yeah. So instantly I was already like looking at, okay, how do I speed things up? How do I become more efficient? How do I time management? Like all the things, right? Like, and then when you get into plumbing, it's like, okay, you don't go out for one tool. You anticipate, I'm going to look at 6 steps ahead, and I'm going to grab 6 tools or 6 different parts that I may need. So I correlated the food industry in the service industry very well. And I was about 23 years old. I was making $16 an hour cash under the table. They don't do that anymore either. And I was working like 60 hours a week. I was young and I didn't go to college, and I was on my own since I was 17. And so I had bills to pay.
Well, yeah.
So, I thought I was doing okay, right? I had a lot more money than most of my friends, and they were in college. And
well, let me stop you there though, because so you were in, like, you're 17 years old at that time. Let's back up just a little bit. 23. Okay. So,
yep.
So let's back up just a little bit.
Sure.
You're saying that you were on your own since you were 17. Mm-hmm. So what was family life like for Chuck? I mean, who was your inspirations, and how was that journey?
Yeah. So I grew up in a very, very wealthy town, but I was the poor kid. Right. And my parents worked multiple jobs. Both of them at least always had one job. Sometimes they had two. I remember my mom working 3 jobs sometimes for extra Christmas money or whatever. My dad actually worked for Donald Trump. He worked at the Plaza Hotel. Wow. And he was in security at Trump Towers and Plaza Hotel when Donald Trump owned that. I've actually met Donald Trump. Very great guy, whether you like him as a president or not. Personally, he is a really great guy. And my stepdad had a letter of recommendation handwritten from him, which I thought was phenomenal. But my parents were always working, right? And so I grew up in this really wealthy community. I call it Beverly Hills of the East Coast. If you know that area, there's a lot of very well-off people.
Well, being like, okay, sorry to interrupt, but so that right there says that, man, like, you see opportunity all around you. So like when you're broke and you see all that opportunity, it's not like you're not seeing other people that are broke with broken mindsets, right? You're seeing a lot of opportunity. So that builds a little bit of some vision that goes along with that. Kind of go into that a little bit.
Yeah, and it sparked a motivation. I mean, my first car was a 1986 Chevy Celebrity. I had friends that were driving BMWs and Audis and stuff, brand new, right? That gave me a motivation. It sparked something in me. It was like, I don't ever want to be broke.
Yeah.
Right. So again, starting with the deli, my parents, I wasn't a very good kid. So my parents decided that I needed to be on my own at 17.
Yeah.
Had to get a job, had to pay rent, all those things. But I knew right then and there that I was going, I don't want to be broke. So if I got to work 100 hours a week, 200 hours a week, and I didn't know what I know now, right? Yeah. That's what I was going to do. And I set out for it. So when I was 23, right, growing up and seeing all this around me, seeing all these people that had, 7,000 square foot homes, multi-million-dollar homes, people that worked on Wall Street, that, big, I mean, there's a lot of old money in that community. Yeah. And, seeing that definitely sparked something inside me. So, I'm on my own since I'm 17. I'm working in delis. I'm 23. And this plumber would come into, and I call him all the time. I talk to him all the time. He was one of the first people that I called when I sold my business. I tell him all the time, I said, you saved my life.
Yeah.
He used to come into the deli every day for coffee. Sometimes a couple times a day when he was working in the area, he'd come in, get lunch. He was really good friends with my boss. And he needed help on the weekends. Right. He was young and growing a plumbing company, and he needed a good employee. So he asked me, said, do you want to come, do a job with me? I said, sure, why not? I got nothing else going on this weekend. I'm not working. Let me come. So, and I'll never forget it. We did a repipe of a sewer line, because most sewer lines in New Jersey, they come out, chest level. It's all sea level. So a lot of the sewer lines are above ground. So we did a whole repipe and above ground sewer line in this basement. And he gives me like $350. And we were there for like 7 hours.
Yeah.
Now I'm 23 on my own. And I'm like, man, you paid me way too much. And he's like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, tell me a little bit more about the job. And he's like, I was like, what did you charge for this? And again, this is going back 26 years ago. So it had to have been, 40 feet of pipe, a bunch of fittings and stuff, right? So he's like, I charge $3,700. And I'm like, okay, $3,700. How much was material?
Yeah.
And he's like, about $300. And I'm like, okay, so you paid me $350. Your material was $300. So you made $3,000 in 7 hours. And he's like, yeah. I said, sign me the fuck up. Right.
Yeah,
and I was sold.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the easiest thing in the world. Everybody needs this, right? At some point, something's gonna go wrong. I said, the demand's there. I'm like, this is amazing. So I made the decision pretty quickly to go to my boss, and I'd been with this deli for a couple of years, and he was very upset, losing a good employee.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go work with this guy because him and my boss were friends. So I took a job. I took a pay cut. I was making $16 an hour, and I took a pay cut to $10 an hour, and I started out in new construction.
Dude,
New Jersey, before PEX was a thing. I've soldered whole homes, boiler system, and the water system. I've soldered every fitting in a home, not small homes, big homes, multifamily homes. I did new construction, and I found out very quickly I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I love the snow, but the winters in New Jersey are brutal.
Trust me, man. I know.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So but I kept with it, right? Because I was like, okay, I'm not this. I see the opportunities here. And within 6 months, I was doing side work for my mom's friends, changing faucets and stuff. Like, I remember the first faucet I changed, I charged them $50, and it was an old growy faucet, and there was like this much space behind and it took me 2.5 hours, and I thought I was the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And my second job, I ended up working for a little bit bigger company. They did service and new construction, but they put me with the father that started the company. I think it was the grandfather that started it. Father took it over and then passed it down. The son was the owner at the time, but the father was still running some of it. And they put me with him. Okay, now this is a 4'6" Italian plumber.
Yeah.
And Mario, whatever you want to call it. Like,
that's definitely Mario the plumber.
This dude was grumpy, and it was just me and him. And they put us in a factory. They had the account for, if you remember Rosart. It used to be Crayola's biggest competitor. If you look it up, they used
absolutely.
There's a factory in Teterboro, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so they had me working on 3-inch steam mains in the middle of the summer, 80-90% humidity, with this old man that if I did something wrong, he didn't communicate very well. He just threw something at you. And I'm ducking pipe wrenches all day long. And every day I'd come out of there. So if it was 90 degrees outside, it was 130 in these factory steam lines. And it was actually a really cool factory. They built it in World War II, and they were producing B-52 bombers out of it. The whole structure on the top of the factory was painted like a park, right? So you couldn't, if you flew over, it just looked like a park. It wasn't a factory. And as a matter of fact, when Rosart opened it up, they opened up one of the storage places, and they found an original B-52 bomber that was complete in there. So they pretty much paid for
that's incredible.
Their factory by that.
But this is during a time when there was no best practices groups or anything like that, where you're learning the art of communication and how to be, all of these different rules that we follow and the principles we use today, man, those were not happening back in those days.
Yep. And I'll tell you, you would go home every single day, and I'd tell myself, if I can make it through this, there's nothing I can't make it through.
Yeah.
Because I was like, look, this is my career. I've made a decision, and I am sticking to it. And I'll tell you, it was brutal. So I went through that, and then I said, okay, I don't like new construction. I don't want to do these factory things anymore. And they would have me run service calls here and there when they got busy, right? Because he had service, new construction, and then the commercial division.
Right. And now let me so in New Jersey, similar to Oregon, where I'm from originally, you have to go through an apprentice traineeship program, and you do not get to go into somebody's house without an actual journeyman card and proof that you can be a plumber and stuff. Now, what was your experience like in the New Jersey area with that?
Yeah, same thing. 4.5 years of school, became a master plumber.
Yeah.
You know, you have to work 40 hours minimum, plus go to school 2 nights a week.
Yep.
I didn't start that right away. It took
Right.
me about 2 years to get into school.
Yeah,
So
about the same as me.
I got
Yeah.
my license. Yeah, I was about 6.5 years in.
Yeah.
But then I went to another company and they put me in service. Like most people that you interviewed, they tell you that they're more experienced than they actually are, right? That's even true nowadays.
Oh, it's more true these days. I mean, because you don't have to really have a license anymore, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I said, look, I got all this experience. And this guy threw me in a truck, right? And threw me on my own, and I shined. Man, I shine, right? So, you know, and this was a short amount of time. This is probably I'd say about a year to a year and a half in. And now I did know, like, I could solder, I could run. I mean, I did a lot of new construction. I knew how to drill the holes and all that stuff, but I didn't know that, the snaking the drains. And this guy did plumbing, drain cleaning, and heating boilers.
Right.
So, and I was fascinated by boilers. That became my thing. It was like, this is my next, I want to learn. And I was really good with clients, right? Because I'm kind of OCD. I'm really good at explaining the job that I just did to people.
Mm-hmm.
So he saw something in me that no one else ever saw before, right? And again, going back 23 years ago, this guy had a service agreement. He was one of very few that had service agreements. And he put out a contest I'll never forget, because it was a contest of, like, he gave you $20 for every service agreement you signed up. And then there was a $1,500 bonus if you got the most in a quarter, right? And I was like, oh, forget it. I blew everybody away by like 400 service agreements. And I knew it, right? Like, I knew right then and there, service was where it's at.
Well, and then think about it. Like, so at that time, he was already understanding that you need service agreements in your business to have an actual business, right? And how valuable is that service agreement today? Think about it. If you had service agreements from the 90s all the way up into the year that you're at now, think of how valuable that is as an asset in your company.
If you're one guy in a truck or you have 10 trucks, you better have a service agreement. Because if you're one guy in a truck, you're probably not worried that you're going to run out of work, right? But as you build the company out in the so-called shoulder season, or you're slower, that is where these service agreements come into play.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's just maximizing your database, okay? Right? So you've got the clients in your database. It's a lot harder to call them and say, hey, let me schedule you for something out of the blue, than if you have a service agreement that says, hey, twice a year, I'm going to come in and inspect your air conditioning and heating, and I'm going to inspect your plumbing system. Yeah. So when you have employees, and that was one of my biggest things. I had over 130 employees. Like, I never wanted them to be worried about a paycheck. I would have them do landscaping around my house. I'd have them clean the warehouse. Whatever it was, they would I never laid anybody off. I never laid anybody off. And that was one of my biggest things, because, look, if you don't give them a paycheck, guess what? Bob, you might, and they may go find your company and go work for you. Yeah. So that was one of my biggest things. But service agreements literally allow you to keep people busy, and there is no downtimes. Yeah. Like, I hear people say, this time of year, I'm always slow. Okay, well, you just haven't cracked the code yet. Okay, because I'll tell you, I had those times too. But once I cracked the code between service agreement, community outreach, outbounding, I never had a slow time. I had more work than I knew what to do with.
Yeah, man, I think we're going to be able to go really deep into some of these topics, because, these are going to be important topics to really discuss, because I think we can actually add some value to some of those smaller companies out there that are looking to scale. So realistically, man, like, on this show, I really want to find, like, that guy out there that maybe he's thinking about getting into the trades, or maybe there's that contractor out there that's, just looking for that next little nugget to, like, figure out how he's going to scale in the trades. Let's try to get in some actionable advice on, what we can do to bring value to that one guy that's looking to really start scaling, that maybe he's under, $1 million and he just doesn't know how to get systems and processes and procedures in place. And maybe he does not have a mentor or have a coach. Let's speak about like how important mentorship is and coaching is, because man, like I went 25 years before I thought that I was always the smartest guy in the room. I didn't need a coach, right? Talk about that and how much that changed your life.
So, give myself a little bit of a plug. I do have a program that we do that's $1 million and under. If you're doing $1 million in revenue or less, one guy in the truck, couple guys in the truck, and you want to scale, I have a program that we run for that. And what that is that's 2 group calls with us a month. And then there's 2 group calls with a fractional CFO. So what we're looking at is we're setting your books up, chart of accounts, budgeting, all that stuff. I think that's super important. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the trades, they don't focus on that. They just go out and do what they do best, serve the clients, grind it out. And then at the end of the year, they try to fix their QuickBooks and it doesn't work. So that's why we designed a $1 million and under program. And I think there is a lot of power, strength in numbers. And you get a community together and it's like, you may be afraid to speak up into a room and ask the important question, but John isn't. Right. And we have it structured where we'll bring a topic every week. We'll also open it up for Q&A and solve some things first or in real time. But I think that that's really important, and it's not a huge commitment, but it's one of those things where you have a resource. I remember what it's like growing it from my garage. It was only 13 years ago that I started my company. Yeah. And I grew it from 0 to 20 million in 12 years.
That's fast growth. Yeah, that's fast growth. So, okay. So a lot of guys don't grow that fast. Let's just face it, right? So let's kind of like start at where most of these guys are. And most guys, you're like, I'll give you a little quick story. So I think we both agreed we have a little bit of time on this podcast. Sure. So my journey, starting back in the early 90s in this thing, I went to work for a guy, and I'll bring this in full circle here, but I started for a guy, that got me out of the grocery business, from when I was doing groceries in 16, 17-year-old kid, and didn't have a direction or anything like that. So like I went in the military, got out of the military, went back to the grocery store because I knew nothing better to do, and was in at the checkout line and had these guys, rough looking dudes, come through my line, and I'm cashing their paycheck, and I'm looking at the size of the paycheck I'm cashing. I'm like, what in the hell are these guys doing? Yep. And it's like, so that instantly sparked the idea that I need to be doing something different. And then I saw this little ad for a plumber's helper on our board, and I pull that tag and I make that phone call, and rest is history. I go to work for that guy. And that being said, I went back to that same guy. So on my last visit to my dad about 6 months ago, he's been in business now for like going on 50 years. And this is like, I've been doing this for over 35 years. So this is over 30 plus years ago, right? So he had 6 trucks back in that day. Okay. He had 7 trucks when I went back to visit him. Okay. So we're not talking about this as average growth where you have a guy that can go from 0 to $20 million in business in 10 plus years. Yep. You got to look at it in boxes of business, right? So your businesses are going to be in a box. It's going to be under $1 million. It's going to be $1 million to $3 million. It's going to be $3 million to $5 million. It's going to be $5 million to $7 million, and $7 million to 10, and 10 up. These are all different boxes that you got to be putting yourself into, because what's good for this box is definitely not going to be good for this box. It takes different things to run those different boxes. So tell me how you went from where you were at to 20 million in that short a period of time. What was the biggest difference?
I can't say. I have to be honest. The first 9 years I ran the business just like most people do. I threw a lot of Hail Marys. I was like Tom Brady of plumbing, of the home service companies. They all stuck, right? I did have the economy at my back. Like the economy was great, right? But I didn't know my numbers. I was doing $12 million a year in year 9. I didn't know my numbers. I didn't know my profitability. I was still in the truck at year 9, right? Then year 10, COVID happened. Me and my partner got out of a truck. We went from 33% profit to negative. We lost $500,000 that year. We doubled in size, but it all came back to I was just doing it like most people do it, right?
Yep.
They get in the truck, they serve the clients, they collect the money, and they don't do anything else really well. Now you can make a great living, $12 million a year, 33% profit. You do the math. That's a great living.
That's a really good living.
Right. But I've, on my own since 17, nothing was going to stop me. I would sell $5-6 million a year easy myself, and I would install close to that myself. Right. So I was very good at what I did. But then I stopped being a plumber and I became an owner.
Mm-hmm.
At year 10, basically.
Yeah.
And you talk about actionable items, and the reason we started at the OG Group, we started $1 million and under, is because if I just could go back to year 1 and implement a mentor in year 1 instead of year 10.
Oh God.
Holy cow. I would have been at $40-50 million a year easy.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I did it and that's why we started the OG Group. I did it just like every other person that gets into the trades for the most part, right? Is they're not good at school. They don't, they want to work with their hands. They want a new environment every single day. Most of them have ADD or ADHD or whatever you want to call it. It's literally just that. So you talk about actionable items, and why we started the Million and Under Group and why we structure it that way is 2 times a month, you're talking about numbers and the way you should set up your company, have a budget in place, know your pricing model correctly, know your labor costs, know all the things behind your numbers. And then you have 2 calls with me and my sister, my partner in the OG Group. Then we start to explore the other things that you need to do. Now, every business is different, but the same. It just depends on where they're at in the journey.
Right.
Okay. Now, I have companies that I work with that are doing $600,000 a year, all the way up to my biggest client is doing $25 million a year. Okay. Now, that $25 million a year company, 9 months ago, he was running it like I was in year 9. He's been doing it for 30 years. He had 1.7% profit last year. 9 months of working with us. He is now in Q3, 13% profit.
Wow.
Okay. We figured out some things. So again, he's at a different spot in his journey than the guy at 600,000.
Right. And when you're looking at a guy that's doing 25, I mean, obviously the difference is that he's got a lot of different things in place. He's got some bandwidth because he's got some operators, he's got some managers, he's got some people that can go out there to bring back the bacon. But realistically, when if you're saying that the guy's stuck at 25 million, and looking how he's going to now, was he stuck at 25 or did you help him get to 25?
No. He was at 25 last year. And again, we've only been working with him for 9 months. His biggest thing was profitability.
Yeah.
His numbers weren't dialed in. Yes, he had managers in place, but they didn't have a process. They didn't have systems. Nobody was holding anybody accountable. It was a free-for-all. It was every day get up and put out fires. And I ran my business like that too before, up to year 10. And then after year 10, I got serious and I learned what it was to really run a business.
Well, I mean, it starts with knowing, well, you say know your numbers, but it's all about percentages of those numbers, right? It's about like, okay, you can only have X amount of percentage of labor of what you got going on, what's coming in. You can only run so much in your marketing budget for what you're making. You got to have a budget that you're going to be working within. And then you got to stick to those numbers. Like you can only run a percentage of your vehicles. You can only run a percentage of the gas. The percentage of all of these things have to equal 100% of everything that you're doing. It can't be 120%. That's when you're losing money.
Yeah, exactly. And when I say I threw up Hail Marys for 9 or 10 years, it truly was that. Like, I would hire a sales guy, I would increase marketing. That was how I operated it. When I got serious about it and I started to work with somebody that taught me the business side of it, it was like if I hired somebody, I knew exactly how much I had in my budget to put into marketing. It wasn't a guess anymore.
Right.
Really good at guessing about it, because that's the type of person that I am. I go really
it's a
fast
feel,
at-
right? It's a feel. We ran off a feel, and
Yep.
and you can feel really good or you can feel really bad, but the truth is like once you understand, like you're gonna spend X amount of dollars in your marketing budget, it means you're gonna run X amount of calls at X amount of what you know you're gonna make on every single one of those things. Now you can start really knowing how many calls you can actually run and how many people you can start hiring.
100%. And then you know exactly where you can allocate things.
Right.
It wasn't, I'm just going to go out and buy 3 trucks and fill those trucks and hope that I make money out of it.
Yeah.
I did that for a lot of years.
Yeah.
You know, and I was successful with it. So a lot of entrepreneurs are very successful running it that way until they're not. Until something catastrophically happens like COVID or an economy shift or 10 employees quit on you in the week, right? Like or you get a major lawsuit and you don't know these things, you'll never make it out of that.
Yeah.
You might have to go back to a grind.
Yeah.
You know, maybe in a truck again. You know, like if you're like me, nothing was going to hold me back. I would do what it takes.
Oh, yeah. 100%. But what? So the biggest realization I had of like for me of what my actual title was in the company at this point was basically I'm just risk management. You know, the only thing I'm caring about at this point is I don't want to be out there running the business or any of that other stuff. I just gotta make sure I'm handling the risk side of it. And that just means like, do I have good contracts in place? Do I have making sure that my insurance is right, making sure that if I'm going to get sued by a customer, an employee or anything like that, I'm protected, that everything is through risk management. I'm just the risk assessment officer at the company at this point, and everybody else just does the widgets in which the company operates in. Is that kind of what you found yourself to be? What did you find your actual title to be when you found out that you have actually how to run the business?
I would say I was, yes, definitely risk management. But again, like I shared with you early on, I'm a visionary.
Yeah.
Right. And I would hear something and be like, oh my gosh, that's such a great fit. We need to do this now.
Yeah.
And then I had the team behind me that would implement it and keep it consistent.
Yeah. So you were an implementer. So I
was not an implementer. My sister was my general manager. She was the implementer. I was the visionary.
Right.
So if I saw something.
But okay. So let me just back that up because you'll go to a lot of conferences and you'll hear a lot of things that you need to put in your company, but like 95% of the people don't do anything about putting things in their company. What I mean by implementer is you hear something, you hear a good idea, you're not going to wait for that to be implemented into your company. You'll send it to your implementer to make sure that implementer gets it done.
Oh, I would be at some of these conferences and I'd be texting my team and being like, we got to look into this. When can we have a meeting about it? Yeah. We got to do this. Like I wouldn't wait till I got home. I was doing it real time. Right. And that's what set me apart from the other people that didn't grow and scale and sell a company that were in the same rooms that I was in. Yeah. Right. I was really good at seeing that. And going back just a little bit of some actionable things, like to the company that wants to grow and scale is like, okay, you got to understand your numbers. From there, then we can start to explore what's the next fit for you. I mean, I think anybody doing $1 million and under, they got to they're all worried about, oh, I need to be on Service Titan because all the big companies are. Yeah. There's a lot of these distractions out there. I need to put AI in place because all the big companies are. No, you're not there on your journey yet, right? Like it's a great idea for a certain size company. And there's fantastic things that are out there and tools are out there, but it depends on the size that you're at. So that's what we are really good at, is identifying where you're at on your journey based on your numbers and building a budget. Okay, so once we determine that, now realistically, if you're under $1 million, what you need to focus on is sales and getting your name out there. Go out, do a door hanger campaign, yard signs, do the door knocking, do the things that nobody else is doing. You got to shake hands and kiss babies, right? Pretend that you're running for mayor. You got to let your community know you are the best at what you do. I saw this guy the other day. I think he's an up and comer in my area. He was featured. His company's doing about $3 million a year. He was featured at a segment at the latest home show, and he got up and spoke to everybody about filtration and tankless water heaters.
Wow.
The PR behind that is fantastic. When he's only, he's doing $3 million a year. His budget for Google isn't as much as these 20, 30, 40, 50 million, $100 million companies, but he's doing things that they're not. Yeah. Right. And that's where people lose it a little bit. They start to get that comparison. Oh, I need to do this because that big company's doing it and I'm going to beat it.
Well,
no, slow down.
I think you're 100% on point with that. The other thing I want to add to that, not to take away from it, but like a lot of guys that are in that spot just didn't understand how to capitalize their company to start with. And how many guys you sit there and you see that they're running, they're trying to run a $100,000 a month business and they got $10,000 working capital, so it's like, you're never going to scale to $100,000 a month if you've got $10,000 of working capital. Talk a little bit about what you found the importance of getting capital was in your company.
Yeah, so I started with $10,000 in the bank. Right? I bought a used van. I never borrowed any money until year 4. I did cash for everything. But going back to everywhere I went, people knew me as Chuck the plumber. Everywhere I went out to eat, I put a plumbing card in when I tipped someone. Every amazing person I came across, I had a conversation, and it was literally, what do you do for a living? B&I. I went to B&I groups. Now I don't like B&I groups. I don't like their structure, but I went to B&I groups because I didn't know anybody.
Because you needed to. Yeah.
And that's what I did, right? But everybody I knew, everything on Facebook that I put out there was about me doing plumbing.
Right.
And realistically, if you look at a post I did earlier today, I talked about hiring and lead generation. I think a lot of people are struggling with that right now. But then I go and look at their Facebook and they're posting about their kids again, or they're posting about their cat. And I'm not saying anything wrong. Like, I love my kids, right? Yeah. But if I post something about my kids, I post, hey, I had a daddy-daughter day because I'm going out of town next week for the OG group. We're going to this conference. I correlate it together. Yeah. And people don't realize the strength of social media. I looked at a company in my backyard. When I started my business, they were doing $12 million a year, and that was 12 years ago. They're now doing over $120 million a year. They had a YouTube channel 12 years ago. Yeah. I thought, these guys are crazy. Why did they have a YouTube channel? And sure enough, it paid off for them.
It all does, yeah.
Right. And now it's TikTok. I didn't think plumbers would be on TikTok ever. But now all of a sudden they're on there. So where are you not seeing the low-lying fruit? Yes, you need a digital marketing presence, but you're going to have to grow to that. You're going to have to grow to the organic, and you're going to have to grow the brand. People are going to have to see you out and about, see your trucks, shaking hands, kissing babies, to correlate when they have a problem and they look on Google to call you.
All right.
That's why these big companies get the traction that they do. They've built the brand alongside of it, so it's recognizable when people Google it. So, and Google's expensive. It's the phone book. Like a full page, just starting out, a full page ad in the phone book, you're not going to afford that, right? You got to think of it like this. Okay, where am I at in the journey? What can I afford to do right now that's going to give me the biggest ROI? And it may be a B&I. I don't know. What I would do if I was starting out again and I was looking at B&Is that I would go and visit as many as I possibly can. I would have as many conversations with people as I could in those BNIs. I'd give as many cards and make as many contacts, and I'd follow up, right? If that's how I would determine to get a BNI. I would also, if I was starting out again today, I would be doing especially if you're in the areas impacted by the hurricanes, I'd be going out and doing a door-to-door campaign, collecting goods to donate people that lost everything in that hurricane.
Yeah.
I would absolutely do it. Number one, it's just a feel-good thing. Like, you're doing something for society. But number two, you're having great conversations with people. What Google and digital marketing did for people is it made them fat and lazy, right? And a lot of, I was one of them. I was spending $250,000 a month with Google. I didn't want that bill every month, but I didn't have the time to go do the things that I would be doing if I was starting out again. So that's what you should be really, if you're really looking to grow and scale, look at what's going to give you the biggest ROI, because you don't have a lot of time. You still got to serve the clients. You still got to bill the clients. You still got to do everything else that a business requires. So it's like, spend your time really wisely on what's going to get you the biggest ROI.
Yeah. And truthfully, like, that, getting past that $1 million point is truthfully one of the hardest parts of the journey. And it's going to be, it's really kind of like the way you think about how one horse is pulling a wagon versus two horses pulling that same wagon, right?
It is.
You get so much more done with two horses than you do with one horse, but we can barely ever get past that one horse point. So, like, if you want to get past 1 million, you have to do certain things within the company in order to do that. Now, really, it comes down to sales, because most guys don't think they're a salesman, right? Plumbing companies are one thing. They're a sales and marketing company first. Then they are the plumbing. They sell plumbing. They just happen to sell plumbing. How you sell your plumbing is all in your sales process. Whatever that process is you better make it so that you got a lot of options so that you can sell a high ticket item all the way down to whatever the Band-Aid repair is. Because, man, if you're not offering lots of options and getting a 100% proven sales system together, dude, if you're spending money on marketing and you don't have a great sales system, you're wasting dollars.
One thing I'm going to add to that, Bob, and this, I had to learn this the hard way. Most people that don't come from money, that are self-made, they have to learn this lesson the hard way. Make sure you are priced correctly.
Yes.
There are so many years that I look back that I was not priced correctly, and I could have been building my business stronger and faster and protecting it more, especially now. If you are out there marketing yourself as the cheapest guy and you'll do it cheaper than everyone else, don't. Stop right now. If anything, you should be more expensive than the guy with 30, 40, 50 employees. Why? Because they're getting the owner, and the owner will do a better job tenfold versus employees.
100%.
Yep.
I couldn't agree with that more. And that's one of the best points I've heard in a long time. Not to mention, like, you can't scale to that company's size if you're already getting your customers set at those prices. Because how hard was it for you to, when you were selling your plumbing for half the price, now you got to get rid of 50 to 70% of your customer base because they're used to paying one price, and they're not going to be paying that price when you get to the point where you actually are paying the right, or charging the right price.
Oh, I had that conversation so many times. You talk about sales, and my biggest thing was like, look, I've always done great for you for the past 5 years. I've grown as a company. How do you expect me to charge you the same I did 5 years ago? And I like, some of them would say, yeah, well, if you're not going to do it, I'll find someone else. Most of them are like, you're right, Chuck, you're the best. I'll have you do it. You got to have those conversations.
But then Chuck's not coming to do the plumbing anymore either, though.
Right. That's why if you charge a premium from the beginning,
yes,
they're a lot more, it's a lot easier for them to understand.
Yes.
And look, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're one guy or you have 10 guys. You should be, if everybody got together, imagine this, if everybody got together and they were charging the same, then what would make people decide on where to go for a company? Well, most people, it's going to be quality. It's going to be how much time you're going to save them. It's going to be what your warranties are, right? So if everybody charges the same price, right, then what sets you apart? You know, so like it's never about price. I used to tell my guys, I had 30 service plumbers. I used to tell them it's never about price. It's about you. They're buying you
from you, the individual. They're buying a service that like you're there in their home to solve a problem that you're there to begin with, right? If you have the right communication skills and presented the right solution to the problem right then, they're buying it from you because of you, not because of the company name or any of that other stuff. It's all about your personality and how well you resonate with that client.
You put me in front of a homeowner, I guarantee 9.5 times out of 10, I'm gonna beat out most people.
Oh yeah. No doubt. Like if I'm the first one on the job, it's a done deal, right? I mean, I'm going to build so much trust with that customer that there's no way that they're not going to, use me as their plumber.
And that's why owners should never worry about their price. Charge what your competitors are charging, if not more. You're going to do a better job. And if anybody argues that, I just say, look, you got the owner here. You think I'm going to answer my phone if something goes wrong? What about the guy that's, you got one of his 30 employees? You think he's going to answer the phone if you call him?
Well, and then what are we really doing anyway, right? Because when we're doing this, we're trading time right now anyway. It's either you're going to have a quicker path to success like yourself. You got out of this thing in 13 years. Kudos to you. The truth is, man, we're building businesses for one reason only, and that's in an exit. And I think you brought up a pretty good point in some of the things I've heard you say, that we're all going to exit no matter what. And there's 3 different ways we're going to exit. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great one. I was just looking through my packet that one of our service packets, and we had an option sheet in our service packet, and in the option sheet, here's the over the top process. But anyways, in the option sheet, it asked, before as you're doing the diagnostic and walking through, getting to know, building a relationship with the client, it asks on our option sheets, what's important to you? Is it quality of work? Is it price? Is it, time? Is it how fast I can get to you? And I can't find it right now, but I had a list on there of what to ask every single client, because I can tell you, after doing it for as long as I did, less than 5% was about price. It's never about the price, right? So, and ask, if you're concerned that you're going to lose the job over price, say, hey, what's more important to you? What's the most important thing to you? A lot of people are going to say warranties. A lot of people are going to say their home being taken care of. We rolled out a clean home guarantee.
Or are you going to come back and fix it if something goes wrong?
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So if you don't charge accordingly, you can't do that. Yep. You won't be able to come back and fix it if you didn't charge accordingly.
Yep. There's something there. Back to your point about the 3 ways you're going to exit. You're either going to leave it to your family member, you're going to sell it, or you're going to pass away. That's the 3 ways you're going to exit. So again, another learned behavior of mine is any business that I work with now, from day one, I'm preparing for an exit, one of those 3 ways. Okay. And I feel that if every business does that, you'll be more successful, because if you're running a business to exit it in one of those 3 ways, you're going to be super dialed in. Now, it's hard to think, back when I first started my company, I didn't have kids. My first was being born. She was born in July of 2011. I started the company in July of 2011 because thought I'd have more time with her. Right. Yeah. So I didn't have kids. So I was looking at it like, okay, am I really going to pass this down? And I thought I was. I said, one day I'm going to have a son. I'm going to teach him all about plumbing, and I'm going to pass this down to him. So I never thought that I was going to sell the company for a long time, so I wasn't prepared for that.
Right.
And when it came down to it, I had to start preparing 2 years before I actually sold. Now I went through due diligence very fast. I went through due diligence in 90 days. And the reason I went with the company that bought me was because they said they could do that. Sometimes diligence takes 6 months to a year.
It could take over a year. Yeah.
So realistically, if you're going to exit a company, one of those three ways, you need to prepare. If you're in business already, you need to be prepared 2 to 3 years before that exit is going to happen. Now you got to dial in.
Or you need to make sure that you're always prepared for an exit, no matter, it could happen 20 years from now, but you should be planning for your exit every single day.
Right. If you have it in your mind that you want to exit your company as fast as possible, know that the journey is going to take you about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
If you haven't done anything. So if you're always prepared for an exit, if you decide tomorrow, hey, I want to go to an exit, you're going to be able to do that in 6 months if you've prepared along the way. And that's how I work with businesses now, and the businesses I have equity in, we are prepared for an exit at any point, right? And we have it in our contracts that every 3 years we review and see if it's the time for that exit, right? So every 3 years, it's a renegotiation place. So, okay, if we're on good trajectory, we got systems and processes in place, the company's running itself, running smooth, we're not putting out fires, we may not want to sell. We may want to go another year and add more EBITDA to it. But we're always constantly ready, and I know that if you run a company, understanding your numbers and having a budget and putting systems and processes in place as you hire the office manager, the CSR, the dispatcher, the technician, you're putting all these systems and processes in place one by one. It's a lot easier than when you have 130 employees and you're trying to implement all that stuff in in a few years.
Yeah.
Because I did that part, and it was not fun. It was a lot of work.
Well, not too many people are looking to buy a mess, right? So it's like you have to look pretty damn organized if you're looking to even have an exit. That being said, it's like right now we're in a massive consolidation, industry, and private equity saw through COVID that, the home service space, we are the pretty girl on the dance floor that they want to dance with now all of a sudden. And it's not that private equity has not always been part of this industry. Let's face it, private equity is every single company's a private equity company, right? So when you break down to what private equity actually is, we're all running private companies and we're looking for some sort of equity in them. And so that being said, if we're looking to be bought by private equity, which is a different subject, private equity doesn't look at companies that aren't certain size, scaled, and systems and processes put in place. Now, you might be a type of company that can partner with a company. You might be a company that can get onto a platform that can be sold to a private equity because now you got some, mass behind it. No matter which way you're looking to get into a position where you can sell, there's really lots of different options out there for business owners who want to either become part of a group, or they want to become partnered with somebody, or they just want to be sold and be done with this thing, right? So what would you say that you found that you've been coaching your clients with? What methods and which ways are you coaching for on that?
Yeah, Bob, that's a great question that nobody's ever asked, and should ask more often, right? So I didn't stay on, right? Like I had 4 or 5 different PE firms looking at me, and I didn't stay on with the company. I stayed on for 90 days and I was done. I went into the office twice in those 90 days. So I really, first day I was done. I had to be available. That's what I preferred, right? Because I knew from that moment that I sold the business that I was going to start the OG group and I was going to help other businesses, right? So, but it all depends on what you want to do. I know other people that it was a family business and they wanted to stay on to make sure that their family members were taken care of and this and that. It's great. right? It all depends on what you want to do. Going back and talking about how fast this can be done and growing and scaling. I know a guy right now, he's going to hit $17 million this year, and he's only 4.5 years in.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I'll be, it really is like, I thought I did it fast in 12 years. There's guys doing it in half the time that I did. Right. So it can be done. You have
what's the power of like, it's been proven now, like with the technology that we're using, the marketing that we're using, the tools that we're using. Yep. It's like amazing how fast you can grow these companies now.
Well, back to what you were saying about staying on, or what I would partnering with a company or this and that. Like it all depends on where you're at in your personal journey too. There's a million ways to structure a deal. Now, if you have a good attorney on your side and you structure the deal format that, hey, I'm only going to work 20 hours a week, and this is what I'm going to do here, and that is in place in a contract, great. Make sure you protect yourself. That's all I'm going to say. If you stay on for any length of time, or you partner and you're going to stay on for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, second bite of the apple, all the nonsense that's going on out there, just make sure you protect yourself. There's clear expectations up front, right? And that's just in general. If you partner with anybody, there's clear expectations up front. This is what I'm going to do, because most entrepreneurs like me will work 100 hours a week. They don't sleep. They think about the bills. You're never shut off, which is okay. But at some point you probably are going to want a different lifestyle.
Yeah, but that being said, like some guys don't have a choice. So there's going to be guys that fit that criteria. They're a $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year company. They don't have their systems and they don't know their numbers well. Their accounting wasn't that great. They've been in business for 30 plus years and they don't really have great books and all that other stuff, right? There's massive amount of these companies out there. They don't really have an option to go sell to private equity. These guys, most of these guys are in the position they need to either partner with somebody or they need to sell for, a basic, cost of parts.
Yep. And at that point, I would say, make sure you have earnouts in place. It's a performance based. If you get to this, you get this. And make sure you have your contracts in place. Set the expectations up front. I don't partner with anybody that we don't have. Like I let them know straightforward. I'm never going to be in a truck. I'm not going to, mail out things. I'm not going to run your service department. I'm not going to be a manager. I'm not going to work in your warehouse. I'm going to be very high level. I'm going to sit on your board and I'm going to direct you in ways to go. Right. And we'll have milestones set in there, earnouts, right? You get, let's say you're doing 2 million and you get to 4, you'll have an earnout there. If we get to 6 million, and I'll have an earnout too, right? Because I'm going to be guiding you. Yep. We get to 6 million, there's another earnout. And again, it goes back to, we go 3 years, no more than 3 years, could be sooner, that we will look at the current situation of the business, where they're at in the journey. Again, if you're going to prepare for an exit, you're already in business, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years. So that's why that 3-year number is important. And now we go and say, okay, as a board, what do we want to do here? Is it time to consider selling? Is it time to continue? Is it what is it that we want to do? But there's those marks. But if you're going to partner, let's say with a PE firm or that, I would just make sure you have your earnouts in place. And it's like you set the expectations up front and clear communication, right? Usually partnerships go south if one partner feels they're doing more than the other. And that's all it is, right?
Well, how do I know that so well, right?
Right. But that's the thing. So if you can set it up front, listen, all partnerships are going to end, just like you're going to exit your business, right? So if you set it up that it's going to end at some point and how it's going to end, you set it up from the beginning and you set the expectation what each person's going to do. Look, nobody would want me to work on financials. I hired an excellent person for that. But nobody, as a partner, they wouldn't want me to do that. That's not my skill set. So I think great partnerships are formed of, like, Bob, you have a certain skill set. I have a different skill set. You do what you do best and what you like to do. I do what I do best and what I like to do. Those are great partnerships.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think my only point that I was trying to make to that is there's a lot of guys and for me, I want to try to get guys to really think about not getting themselves in a position where their only hope is to get an asset sale. You know, that's typically what you're going to see out there, because nobody, like, you really have nothing of value if you didn't have all of these other things in place to begin with. If you're trying to sell when you're tired and you're done and you don't have the energy to put in place what needs to be done, you're an asset sale. And so, and that's the majority of the companies out there. Now that we're really getting to that point where we got the largest amount of baby boomers in history exiting their service-based businesses, and they don't have like a good plan in place. I mean, let's face it, there's a really strong arbitrage out there for people that want to buy their first service company, you know, and that's a completely different conversation than we're having right now. But for those guys that don't want to be just in an asset sale, this is the conversation they need to be listening to, because they need to start figuring out how they can, you know, figure out how they can reverse engineer from where they're going to exit to where they're at right now. And that might be 3 years. It might be 5 years. You might be able to get it done in 2 years, but you know, it's definitely a conversation that you need to be having for those guys that don't really have an option. I mean, that's a lot of those companies out there.
You know, that's all very valid points and very true. Due diligence is probably one of the worst processes I've ever went through in my life.
Almost like a divorce, right?
Oh, it was terrible. And I was in an active lawsuit during due diligence.
Yeah.
And I had to personally guarantee that active lawsuit. So look, I don't care who you are. If you're listening to this and you're considering selling, jump on my website, opusgolds.com, book a 1 hour time slot with me. I will give you sound advice. I'm not a broker. I'm not an attorney. I'm not there for anything other than to help you figure out which direction you want to go in. And it's true. If I didn't ask the questions that I asked, it could have gotten really bad, really, really bad very quickly. And there was lots of money on the table. I won't say how much, but there was lots of money on the table. And Bob, if I didn't do my own due diligence, and I didn't have people supporting me in a corner that had been through it, like one guy that I was friends with just sold his company a year before I did. And I was asking him lots of questions, you know. The thing is too, is there's a lot of sharks out there. So be careful who you talk to. You know, you said it to me earlier on today in our conversation before we started recording. Like, you know, one thing that brought you to having me on is, you know, you feel that I'm a trustworthy person. Look, there are a lot of people that aren't out there, and I experienced that firsthand too. Before I decided who I was going to sell to, I had a lot of decisions to make. And I'll tell you, even the number that I got at first, they tried to renegotiate at the end. So when I tell you due diligence is the most brutal process I've ever been through, it is. And you have to protect yourself. If I did not have guides and mentors in place, being able to consult with them and ask them proper questions, I would have lost a ton of time, money, and, you know, quite frankly, I don't know if I would have got it done.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things you don't want to go through alone.
Right.
And one of the smartest things that someone told me, if you think that, you know, and I'll try to put it in the best way possible. If you think that you're going to sell it on your own without a broker, you may want to think twice. It's just like selling your house for sale by owner.
Right.
Okay? Brokers, the companies that are going to buy you, they have two checkbooks. They have one that's if you have a broker and one that if you don't. And the one that if you don't is a lot less than if you do.
Yeah.
Now that's first. Second is the amount of pain and suffering your broker and their teams are going to be able to help you with because they've been through it. They know the questions to ask, the attorneys, all that stuff. That's the other protection that you have. It's just like having a real estate agent versus selling it yourself.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of crazy people out there that sell homes on their own, right? But I can tell you this, if that goes south, it's going to go south really bad. And when you're selling a company, it's the same way. Look, it's a cost. You pay a realtor 6% commission, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But there's protections in there. And don't just go with any broker, right? Make sure you find a good one. I interviewed three. Yeah.
No, there's a lot of good business brokers out there. There's a lot of options out there. Let's just face it. Like you don't have to be bought and sold through a business broker. You can join platform groups. There's a lot of partnership groups out there. There's a lot of options out there for owners out there that aren't sure of what it looks like for them from when they're ready to exit their business, or even if they aren't ready to exit their business, they don't even have an idea of how should I even start considering, knowing a little bit of what's best for me. And just asking the question is, how you get the answer. So like, there's a lot of different, answers out there to the right questions. So I think what I hear you saying is just hit you up and, let's just have a 1 hour conversation about what it means to you and what that looks like for you. No cost. I mean, we'll just talk about it and we'll see what direction you want to go.
100%.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, I think that's, a great, piece of advice that you've given out there. I think there's some good actions that I think that you've added on here. Is there anything that we missed on that I think that a smaller guy out there needs to hear out of this episode?
I mean, we touched on it, but don't do it alone. There's so many great resources out there and technology, right? Like you briefly touched on that. I want to go back to that for a second. I sold in August 2023. It's October of 2024. And I just went to Service Titans Pantheon last week. The amount that technology has changed in a year is incredible.
Yeah.
So, and I met with a guy a month and a half ago that's still on paper invoices doing $8 million a year. And I was like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
And we're going to work with him to get him up to speed because he's probably leaving $10 million on the table. Not really, but close.
Well, I mean, in an exit, he's leaving a lot more than that.
A lot more than that. So again, technology, I did a post again earlier today and I said, this is the greatest time in trades businesses to be hiring, right? Number one, from December to February, it's the greatest time anyways, because people are, holidays and Christmas bonuses weren't what they expected, so on and so forth. So if you're not hiring between December and February, you better step that game up. Secondly is robots and AI. They can get a robot or AI to answer a phone and take down information. They can't get a robot to change out a water heater or those type of things. So my marketing right now, if I was hiring, number one, I would be putting out posts wherever I'm posting. Do you want a secure career that robots aren't going to be able to take away?
Yeah.
And then secondly, I would be doing a hiring night. And what I mean by that is once a month, come if you got a shop, set up a water heater and show people how to, solder or whatever, and try before you jump into a career. But I would be doing hiring nights. I did hiring nights on Zoom. I would get 15, 20 people into a Zoom room. I had a script that we ran through, showed them what my company was all about, what our core values were, where the direction we were going. One of my biggest things was we were 24/7, 365 days a year. We have more clients to serve than most. We're family owned and operated, and you will never be without work. My employees are guaranteed that I haven't laid anybody off in 12 years. I'm not going to start now. So that's how I did my Zoom hiring events. And I would have my employees come on. They would come on and they would get to ask questions about people that they might work with to see if they would fit the culture. And they would also tell people, if you're considering working for this company or somewhere else, this is why you should be here. Right.
Yeah.
So hiring nights on hiring events are fantastic. If you want more information about that, again, book a strategy session with me or jump on a call. If you don't mind, I'll let you guys know right now.
Yeah.
Every Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time and 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I do an open Zoom Q&A. We usually bring a topic to it that we see are going on in the industry at the times. And then we leave it open for Q&A. And it's your chance to come and just ask us questions, find out more about the group, find out more about what we do. And I promise, I've heard it, I don't know how many times, people leave there with gold.
Yeah.
Right? And we're open to do it. Just, you got to join our Facebook group to do it. It's the OG Business Success Group on Facebook. Bob, if you could give a link in there.
Yeah, I'll put all that in the description for sure.
Yeah,
that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason we do it through our group, we don't put our link out on public, is because hackers will come in and people so we want to vet the real business owners, and it's a great group with great conversation. I will be honest, by the time this episode airs, we may be getting rid of the 6 p.m. one. Because I run that and I've got young kids.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely have the 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time every Thursday, free to join. You can come in, sometimes there'll be 10 people there. Sometimes there'll be one person there. Sometimes there'll be 30 people there. If you have a situation that needs more private and you want to book a one-on-one, go to our website, opusgolds.com, and book a one-on-one with us. Some people don't like the group format, and I understand.
Yeah, no, that's really, really great advice and great information. I'm sure there's a lot of people that will find value in that. And that being said, like those guys that are still stuck in that small mindset, they're going to be training a lot of guys out there that's going to be going to their competition, right? Because in this consolidation market, those guys that are buying up the companies, they're not competing for your customer. They're competing for your internal customer, and that's the skilled labor. With the shortage that we have out there of skilled labor to begin with, that's trained and ready to go, who do you think is going? I mean, if you're not charging the right price for your services, you're not paying the best wages out there and offering the best tools and vans and giving 2 weeks of paid vacation, and you're not being able to compete for what the bigger companies out there are going to be doing, which is competing for your talent. So if you're not charging correctly, and I want to keep going back to that point because it's so important for you guys to figure out your pricing, because it's not just for earning more jobs out there. It's to keep your employees employed, the people that you invested in, and so that these other companies out there are not going to be able to take your employees. What do you have to add to that?
That's a really good one. So my first employee that I hired 12 years before I sold the company was there on the last day. So I had about an 82% retention rate, and that's good in this industry.
Yeah.
It's really good in this industry.
100%.
Most of them are 40 to 60. But I built a culture, right? And my culture, my guys knew I'd take the shirt off my back. They really did, right? And it proved itself out. We had a lot of fun, right? So, like if you build a culture where, yes, you have a target, you have a budget in place, and you're shooting for that goal, but you leave a certain amount in your budget to reward, and you build a culture around that, you're unstoppable. Nobody's going to want to leave. And what you're going to find is, as you grow, people are going to want to flock to that culture. So all your competitors are going to be coming to that culture.
Yeah.
Right. All your competitors' employees are going to want to come to that culture. So I think it's really important. Our culture, man, they were a family. You know, and it was one of the hardest things for me to sell the business, because that was in place. And I still talk to a lot of them. Anyone that wants to call me for advice. Some of them went on and started their own companies. Some of them went on to other companies. I'm always free to talk to them, right?
Yep.
I always had an open door policy. And there was something that I said today earlier on one of my client calls. And it's, I know, no doubt in my mind, anyone that's ever worked for me is in a better place in their life because they worked for me. And if you build a culture like that, whether it's just you in the truck or you have one employee, know that every single day that you're looking to improve their life somehow, and it doesn't have to be money. It could literally be an extra day off on their birthday.
Yeah.
A pizza party. Something saying thank you.
Yep.
If you run a culture like that, there's no way anybody's ever going to want to leave.
Right.
Okay. And that's where right now, I think, look, in your marketing, come work for a company that's family owned and operated.
Yeah.
Right? You want to beat out the PE firms, you want to beat
Yeah.
out the corporations, that should be all over your hiring pieces.
Yeah.
And hiring is a form of marketing.
Yep.
Correct?
Absolutely.
So literally, that's what I'd be doing. And I'd be talking every single day and showing people my culture on social media, on these hiring events. I had videos of our company barbecues and Christmas parties and stuff, and I would throw them on display during these hiring events. And people were like, why wouldn't I want to work there?
Yeah.
Realistically, people, you can't hold them back from their better future, whether they know it's a better future or not,
Yep.
or whether it really is or not. So you don't look at it as like, oh, I'm going to train this guy and he's going to leave. I got to have a contract or this and that. No, you just do the right thing, build a great culture. They're never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Last that I'll leave with this, and I wish I would have done this earlier on. I was close to doing it. I just couldn't find a building that fit the size. I needed about a 10,000 square foot building. But I was going to build a school, and not a school like curriculum. This was going to be hands-on. Okay. And I know there's some guys doing it now, but this was going to be hands-on. I was going to have a working HVAC unit.
Sure.
I was going to have a garage doors in there. I was going to have a working drain cleaning section. I was going to have a working boiler, working tankless water heater, and I was going to bring guys in. In order for you to get into a truck, you had to go into the school for 30 days.
Yeah.
How much faster do you think you could pump out technicians, especially drain cleaners?
Yeah.
I mean, I could turn a drain cleaner in his own truck, no experience, in 90 days.
Yeah.
If I put him in a 30-day program, I was going to unleash a beast.
Yeah.
Now, what it did for me was that opened up who I could hire. Now I'm hiring for personality and not experience.
100%.
Right?
That is.
And that was my next step. I was literally on the process to doing that. But I think if you could, even if you build it out in a small section, and that's the other thing too, is your onboarding process. You have to have it dialed in. You can't just say, oh, you're hired, jump in a truck. You may have been doing this for 30 years, but you never did it the OG way.
Right.
Right. And you have to have a dialed in onboarding process. So when people come through the door, I don't care how experienced they are, whatever you've learned, great. You're going to be able to bring some of that over here, but this is how we do it here.
Dude, yeah, that's 100%. So such great advice. And for me, just like you, that's how I scaled my business in the plumbing side, is that I made my drain cleaning division my onboarding division, where this is where you're going to train. You're going to I can get you, into people's homes doing drain cleaning in 60 days. Yep. So that, in a skill set of level 1 through level 2, level 3 type guys, you had to graduate past level 3 drain cleaning to become a service technician. Yep. And so all my small level guys are all drain cleaners, and I can build a really good drain cleaning division out of guys that are just training, that are being managed by other skilled people. So it becomes a very good way to scale a company, especially a plumbing company. If we're going to be real here, we're talking plumbing companies today, but your service-based business, I mean, there's lots of different ways to really scale quickly. And before we really end the show, I really want to bring this point home, because go ahead.
1 second, Bob, because here's the thing. So if you're not a plumbing company and you don't have the option of drain cleaning, what do you have that you can bring someone in and teach them fast, right? Is it window cleaning? Is it carpet cleaning? Is it duct cleaning? It's what is something, a service out there that doesn't take a lot of skill that you can teach a person really quickly and get them generating money for the company?
Right. No, 100%. I love that point. The other one that I really wanted to mention, because this is one thing that really guys don't even think about, is, through acquisition. So many people want to scale their company, and they do it through marketing. And like, marketing is one of the hardest ways to grow your company on a greenfield, model. If there's that opportunity out there that when a company's selling in an asset sale and they're a 20-year company, they've got all these assets that they're bringing to the table with you, and they got a customer base of 30,000 customers. You're paying now maybe $50 for a customer instead of $500 that you're paying for on Google right now. But then you're getting your assets, you're getting their employees, you're getting all of this stuff and their marketing that they've had turned on for all of these years. Yep. So the amount of value that you can get out of acquisition, if you've got a few $100,000 to spend, and you want to put that towards marketing, and acquisition is by far the fastest way to grow your company to double the size and scale it, if you got systems and processes and procedures in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
So I wanted to make that point real quick.
Yeah. And I'll add just one thing. And if you're interested in learning how to do it, you can do it with no money.
Right.
You can literally acquire a company. We bought a fireplace company and tucked it into our plumbing company. We were on the process to do an HVAC company and an electrical company, just time didn't allow it. Yeah. And most of those deals were zero money down.
Yep. I've done the same. So it can be done. It's not that difficult. It's the fastest way to grow your company. And I think actually the smartest way to grow your company, quite honestly. Yep. But that being said, man, I think this was a great show today. I'm going to leave all of that information in the description of the show so that people can easily find you. Chuck, I want to thank you so much for your gracious time today. And, I look forward to maybe doing a few more of these in the future with you.
Yeah, man, I could talk hours and days and days. I love business. You can tell in my voice, in the passion behind me. Like, I just love business, especially the trades. Yeah. In any business for that matter. The trade specifically, because I was a plumber, right? Yeah. Grew it from my garage to where it was when I sold it. And there's a lot, like, I know how many people are out there and in a place where I was. Yeah. And that's what I love about doing what I do now. Yeah, I agree with that, man. It's like, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I got enough, knowledge to be dangerous. And I think between, guys like us who get out there, and I think this is the importance of guys like in the stage where we're at, like, it's important for us to give that information out. Like, we're at that age now where it's actually, we owe it to the thing that's put us where we're at right now. Sure. Like, give that information back. It's always going to pay back to you as you're giving it out. Yep. 100%. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you chopping it up with me today. This was a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to talk with you again. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks, Bob. Right. Take care.
Entrepreneurship, got that inspiration. Yeah, now I'm just doing it. Working on these projects.